Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper. Uncover the hidden secrets of history, from ancient mysteries to lost civilizations. Join us on this thrilling journey. Subscribe and dive into the unknown. The Nazi regime is remembered for its brutal military power and its horrifying ideology. But what if the source of that darkness was not just political, but supernatural? What if, behind the scenes, a shadowy secret society was fueling the Nazi Party with ancient, occult beliefs? Today, we investigate the Thule Society, the mysterious brotherhood at the heart of the Nazi rise to power. Did they truly believe they were the descendants of a lost super race from a mythical land? Were Nazi leaders secretly searching for holy relics and ancient superweapons? Let's pull back the curtain on one of history's darkest chapters and explore the chilling connection between the Thule Society and Nazi occultism. The story of the Nazi Party is often told as a political one, a tale of economic collapse, national humiliation, and the rise of a charismatic demagogue. But to truly understand the dark heart of Nazi ideology, we must look deeper, beyond the political rallies and into the shadowy world of secret societies and twisted mysticism. The foundations of the Third Reich were not laid in a government building, but in the firelit drawing rooms of a secret brotherhood. To find the source of the poison, our journey begins not with Hitler, but with a strange and potent intellectual movement that swept through Germany and Austria in the decades before the First World War. This movement was called Ariosophy. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Europe was in a state of flux. The old certainties of religion were being challenged by Darwin's theory of evolution, and the Industrial Revolution was transforming society at a breathtaking pace. In this climate of uncertainty, many people sought new, alternative belief systems. Ariosophy was one such system, a bizarre and toxic cocktail of ideas. It was a fusion of fervent German nationalism, a romanticized vision of ancient paganism, and a distorted interpretation of Theosophian esoteric movement that believed in ancient masters and lost continents like Atlantis. The leaders of the Ariosophy movement were eccentric and often charismatic figures, men like the Austrian mystic Guido von List and the defrocked monk Georg Lanz von Liebenfels. These men created a fantastical and self-serving new history for the Germanic peoples. They claimed that the so-called Aryan race was not just another group of humans. They were, in fact, a superior root race, a lineage of godlike beings who were more spiritually and biologically advanced than anyone else on Earth. They taught that these original Aryans were endowed with supernatural abilities and possessed a deep, mystical connection to the cosmos. They argued that the greatness of the German and Nordic peoples was a direct inheritance from these divine ancestors. However, they also preached a message of fear. They claimed that this noble bloodline had been diluted and corrupted over the centuries through intermixing with what they deemed inferior races, most notably the Jewish people. Ariosophy was, at its core, a mythology designed to justify racism, a spiritual excuse for ethnic hatred. It provided a sense of magical destiny and a convenient scapegoat for all of society's problems. But every great mythology needs a mythical homeland, a lost paradise from which its heroes emerged. For the Ariosophists, this was a crucial missing piece. They found their answer in the faint whispers of ancient Greek legend. Greek and Roman writers had spoken of a remote, mysterious land in the far north, on the very edge of the known world, which they called Ultima Thule. To the ancients, Thule was a real but barely reachable place, likely a reference to Norway or Iceland. But the Ariosophists took this real geographical name and transformed it into a full-blown mythical continent. In their new mythology, Thule became a glorious, vanished island in the North Atlantic, a northern Atlantis. This was the magical homeland of their Aryan master race. They envisioned Thule as a place of incredible beauty and advanced technology, a kingdom of ice and light, powered by cosmic energies. It was here that the original Aryans had lived in a golden age, before a great cataclysm, perhaps a flood or an ice age, destroyed their continent and forced the survivors to migrate south, spreading their superior bloodline into Germany and other parts of the world. The myth of Thule gave their racist ideology a powerful, romantic origin story. It was a lost Eden they dreamed of reclaiming, a paradise whose purity they were sworn to restore. These ideas saw a superior Aryan race, a lost homeland in Thule, and a deep-seated anti-Semitism swirled in the intellectual underground of Germany for years. They were discussed in esoteric journals and fringe study groups. But it was the chaos and national humiliation at the end of World War I that allowed these fringe ideas to move into the political mainstream. In 1918, Germany was a broken nation. The Kaiser had abdicated, the economy was in ruins, and the people felt betrayed and desperate. In the city of Munich, a hotbed of political extremism, a man named Rudolf von Sebetendorf decided that the time was right to bring the mythology of Thule into the real world. Sebetendorf was a shadowy figure, a German adventurer who had spent years in the Ottoman Empire, where he had become deeply involved in Freemasonry and esoteric Sufi mysticism. He returned to Germany and, using his considerable wealth, founded a new secret society. He gave it the name that would echo through history: the Thule Society. On the surface, the Thule Society presented itself as a respectable, scholarly club dedicated to the study of ancient German literature and folklore. Its members were wealthy, aristocratic, and influential, a collection of judges, lawyers, university professors, and rich industrialists. But beneath this veneer of a literary society, its true purpose was far darker. It was a fiercely nationalistic, anti-communist, and virulently anti-Semitic organization. It was a political conspiracy group that used the myths of Aryosophy as its guiding ideology. They adopted the swastika, an ancient symbol that had been co-opted by Guido von List as a sign of Aryan purity, as one of their key emblems, long before it became the infamous symbol of the Nazi Party. The Thule Society quickly became more than just a debating club. In the violent chaos of post-war Munich, they became active political players. They engaged in espionage, stockpiled weapons, and plotted to overthrow the new communist-led government in Bavaria. But their most significant and lasting contribution was not on the battlefield. It was as an ideological incubator. The Thule Society acted as the crucial meeting point, the dark cradle where the key figures and ideas that would form the Nazi Party first came together. The membership list and the roster of guests who attended the Thule Society's meetings reads like a who's who of early Nazism. Alfred Rosenberg, the man who would become the chief racial theorist of the Nazi Party, was a frequent guest. Hans Frank, later the brutal Governor-General of occupied Poland, was a member. Rudolf Hess, who would become Hitler's devoted deputy, was also a member of the society. But perhaps the most important connection was a man named Dietrich Eckart. Eckart was a prominent journalist, a drunkard, a poet, and a fanatical anti-Semite. He was a leading member of the Thule Society and one of its most powerful voices. He would also become one of Adolf Hitler's earliest and most important mentors. In 1919, Eckart and other members of the Thule Society helped to found and finance a small, insignificant political party called the German Workers' Party. A young, charismatic army corporal named Adolf Hitler was sent by the military to spy on this party. Instead of spying, he was captivated by their message. He joined the party, and with the help, mentorship, and financial backing of Thule members like Dietrich Eckart, he quickly rose to become its leader. He would soon rename it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. The connection is undeniable. The Thule Society provided the mythological framework, the key symbols like the swastika, the initial funding, and the crucial network of influential people that allowed the fledgling Nazi movement to take root and grow. The path to Auschwitz, in a very real sense, began in the esoteric drawing rooms of a secret society obsessed with the myth of a lost polar kingdom. The foundation had been laid. To understand the terrifying actions of the Nazi regime, we must first understand the truly bizarre and twisted mythology that underpinned its ideology. This was not a simple political philosophy. It was a complete, alternative worldview, a dark faith built on a foundation of crackpot science, racist mysticism, and science fiction fantasy. The Thule Society was the temple where these strange doctrines were first preached, a place where a new, dangerous reality was constructed. These were not just idle beliefs for discussion. They were treated as absolute truths, a set of core doctrines that would justify a war against the world and a war against reality itself. The first and most fundamental doctrine of the Thule Society's belief system was the root race theory. This was an idea they borrowed and horribly distorted from the theosophical teachings of Madame Blavatsky. Theosophy proposed that humanity evolved over millions of years through a series of 7 root races, each one corresponding to a different continent and a different stage of spiritual development. The Thule Society and other Ariosophists seized upon this idea and injected it with their own racist poison. They declared that the 5th root race, the Aryan race, was the pinnacle of human evolution. They taught that the original Aryans were not just culturally superior, but biologically and spiritually different. They were a race of supermen, almost demigods, who were taller, stronger, more intelligent, and possessed latent psychic abilities. According to this twisted doctrine, the homeland of this master race was the lost polar continent of Thule. It was there, in a pristine, icy kingdom, that the Aryans had maintained their absolute purity. But after the cataclysm that destroyed their homeland, the survivors were scattered across the globe. As they migrated south into lands like India and Europe, they began to intermix with what the Thule Society deemed the lesser races that had evolved from different, inferior rootstocks. This interbreeding, they preached, was the source of all the world's problems. It had diluted the pure, divine blood of the Aryan, causing a degeneration of the race, a loss of its psychic powers, and a decline of its great civilization. The ultimate goal, therefore, was not just political conquest. It was a grand, biological purification project. The mission of the German people, as the supposed purest descendants of the Thulians, was to reverse this process. They had to systematically eliminate the inferior bloodlines, especially the Jewish people whom they saw as the antithesis of the Aryan, in order to purify their own race and reawaken the dormant, godlike potential that lay sleeping in their blood. This doctrine transformed racism from a mere social prejudice into a sacred cosmic duty. But if the descendants of Thule were scattered on the surface of the earth, where were the original pure-blooded masters? This question led the Thule Society into even stranger territory, into a belief system that sounds like it was pulled directly from a Jules Verne novel. A popular theory within these esoteric circles was the hollow earth theory. This idea proposed that the earth is not a solid sphere, but a hollow shell with an internal sun, continents, and oceans. The theory suggested that the true, undiluted descendants of the Thulian superrace had not remained on the surface at all. Instead, they had retreated into this inner world, where they had built a vast subterranean civilization, preserving their purity and their incredible technology. This belief held a powerful allure. It meant that a source of immense power and guidance might exist right beneath their feet. It also meant that expeditions to the polar regions, the supposed entry points to the inner Earth, could potentially lead to contact with these powerful ancestors. This belief in a hidden world of superbeings was powered by another core doctrine, the obsession with a mysterious energy called Vril. The concept of Vril did not come from any ancient text or mystical tradition. It was invented by an English science fiction novelist named Edward Bulwer Lytton in his 1871 book, The Coming Race. In the novel, the narrator discovers a subterranean race of super beings who have mastered a limitless, all-powerful energy force called Vril. Vril could be used to heal, to power flying machines, to animate objects, and to destroy enemies with a flash of light. It was a kind of cosmic life force energy, a physical manifestation of divine power. For the members of the Thule Society, this was not science fiction. They believed the coming race was a fictionalized account of a genuine reality. They became convinced that Vril was the real source of power for the Aryan race. They believed the Thulians living inside the earth had mastered Vril, which explained their godlike abilities. This belief had profound implications. It suggested that if the modern German people could purify their blood and reawaken their psychic abilities, they too could learn to tap into this limitless energy source. The search for Vril became a kind of holy grail for Nazi occultists. It was a quest for a superweapon, a source of free energy, and the key to unlocking their own divine potential, all at once. The Thule Society's rejection of mainstream reality wasn't limited to biology and geology. They even created their own bizarre version of cosmology. Many influential Nazis, especially SS leader Heinrich Himmler, were fanatically devoted to a pseudoscientific theory known as the Welteislehre, or the world ice theory. This theory was the brainchild of an eccentric Austrian engineer named Hans Horbiger. Horbiger claimed to have received his knowledge in a vision, and he declared that the entire universe was not governed by gravity, but by a perpetual cosmic struggle between fire and ice. According to the world ice theory, the Milky Way was not a collection of stars, but a giant ring of ice blocks. Moons were giant snowballs, and all of cosmic history was a story of icy moons crashing into fiery suns. This theory was, by all scientific standards, complete and utter nonsense. But it was incredibly appealing to the Nazi leadership for several reasons. First, it was grandiose and apocalyptic, which fit their worldview. More importantly, it was presented as a Germanic or Nordic alternative to what they saw as the corrupt, Jewish science of the modern era. They loathed figures like Albert Einstein, and the world ice theory gave them a way to reject his theory of relativity and all of modern physics, replacing it with a homegrown, mystical cosmology that placed their own race at the center of a cosmic drama. For Himmler, believing in the world ice theory was a test of loyalty and a way to prove one was free from the intellectual corruption of modern science. When you combine all of these strange and powerful doctrines, the belief in a superior root race from Thule, the idea of a hollow earth powered by Vril, and a universe made of ice, you arrive at the final, action-oriented part of their belief system, the obsessive need to find physical proof of their mythical ancestors. If the legends were true, then the evidence had to be somewhere out there in the world, hidden in the most remote and inaccessible places on Earth. This belief transformed their racist mythology into a tangible geographical quest. They believed that survivors of the Thulean cataclysm might have established ancient colonies in high, mountainous regions that would have been safe from a global flood. This led to a fanatical interest in places like the Himalayas in Tibet and the Andes Mountains in South America. They became convinced that these remote mountain ranges might hold lost cities, secret libraries, or even living communities of pure-blooded Aryans who held the key to their past. An expedition to Tibet, therefore, was not just a scientific journey. It was a pilgrimage, a holy quest to find the source of their own divinity. This bizarre set of beliefs, a twisted knot of racial fantasy, science fiction, and junk science, formed the ideological engine of the Thule Society. It was a complete, self-contained reality that justified their hatred, fueled their sense of destiny, and would soon send the agents of the Third Reich to the farthest corners of the globe in search of the phantoms born in their own dark imagination. Beliefs, no matter how strange or fantastical, are harmless as long as they remain in the realm of thought. But the true danger begins when those beliefs are given power, when they are backed by the unlimited resources and ruthless machinery of a totalitarian state. Under the Third Reich, the The bizarre occult mythology of the Thule Society did not remain confined to secret drawing rooms. It metastasized. It became the driving force behind a series of real, state-sponsored projects, expeditions, and obsessions. The man at the very center of this transformation was one of history's most terrifying figures. Heinrich Himmler, the Reichsführer of the SS. Himmler was not just a bureaucrat of terror. He was a true believer. He was a fanatical occultist who saw his SS not just as a political police force, but as a new holy order of Aryan knights. And he used the full power of the state to turn his mystical fantasies into chilling reality. To understand the occult Reich, we must open the case files on some of its strangest and most disturbing projects. Our first case file concerns the intellectual heart of Himmler's occult empire, a bizarre organization known as the Ahnenerbe. The name translates to Ancestral Heritage Society, and on the surface, its mission sounded academic and almost respectable. It was officially chartered as a research institute dedicated to studying the archaeological, anthropological, and linguistic history of the Germanic race. It was staffed with university professors, archaeologists, and historians. But the Ahnenerbe was a complete perversion of science. It was a state-funded think tank with one single, overriding mission: to find scientific proof for the racist and mythological beliefs of the Nazi Party. It was, in effect, the research and development wing for Himmler's occult obsessions. The Ahnenerbe operated on the principle of start with the conclusion, then find the evidence. Their conclusion was always the same: that the Aryan race was a superior, godlike race that had once ruled the world. Their job was to twist history and archaeology to fit this narrative. They sent teams to excavate ancient sites all over Europe, not to discover the true history of the people who lived there, but to find any scrap of evidencia symbol on a piece of pottery, a particular skull shape that they could claim was proof of an ancient Aryan presence. They studied rock carvings in Sweden and claimed they were a lost Aryan script. They scoured ancient texts like the Norse Eddas and claimed they were literal histories of their Germanic godmen. The Ahnenerbe was a machine for generating academic fraud, a pseudoscientific enterprise that provided the intellectual justification for the Holocaust. They were the ones who provided the data that classified people as subhuman, turning fantasy into a death sentence for millions. This brings us to our second case file, the 1938 SS Tibetan expedition. The Ahnenerbe's belief that the origins of the Aryan race could be found in the high plateaus of Asia led them to organize one of the strangest expeditions of the 20th century. In 1938, Himmler personally sponsored a team of SS scientists, led by a zoologist named Ernst Schaefer, to travel to the remote and mysterious land of Tibet. The official, public purpose of the expedition was legitimate scientific research, to study the flora, fauna, and people of the region. But the secret, occult mission was far more important. Himmler and his Ahnenerbe colleagues were obsessed with the idea that Tibet might be a refuge for the last, pure-blooded descendants of the Aryan survivors from Atlantis or Thule. They believed that in the isolated valleys of the Himalayas, they might find a living link to their own divine ancestors. The SS team spent months in Tibet. While they did conduct real scientific work, they also carried out the Ahnenerbe's racial agenda. The team's anthropologist, a man named Bruno Beger, meticulously measured the skulls and facial features of hundreds of Tibetan people. He made facial casts and took hair samples, all in a desperate attempt to find evidence of Aryan racial characteristics. They were searching for their lost brothers, for proof that their bloodline originated in this sacred, mountainous land. The expedition also searched for lost spiritual knowledge, investigating ancient monasteries in the hope of finding a hidden text or a secret oral tradition that preserved the lost wisdom of Thule. They found nothing, of course, but the expedition itself stands as a chilling testament to how far they were willing to go, literally to the roof of the world, in pursuit of their racial fantasies. Our third case file moves from the search for living ancestors to the hunt for inanimate objects imbued with supernatural power. Heinrich Himmler was not just obsessed with race, he was obsessed with holy relics. He was a deep believer in object-based magic, the idea that physical artifacts could hold and radiate real power. He believed that possessing certain legendary items could grant him and the Nazi regime invincibility and ensure their 1,000-year reign. This obsession led him on a quest to gather the most powerful relics of European history, turning the SS into a modern-day order of dark Grail knights. The most famous example of this was his transformation of Welsburg Castle, a beautiful triangular castle in Germany. Himmler took over the castle and began an incredibly expensive project to remodel it into the mystical center of the SS, a new Camelot for his Order of Aryan Knights. The central room was a great hall with a sun-will mosaic on the floor, where he planned to hold esoteric rituals. The crypt below was to be a sacred tomb for the highest-ranking SS officers. This castle was meant to be the repository for the relics he sought. Legends have swirled for decades that Himmler dispatched SS teams across Europe to find the most powerful artifacts of Christian mythology. The two most famous are the Holy Grail, the cup used by Christ at the Last Supper, and the Spear of Destiny, the spear said to have pierced Christ's side on the cross. According to the legends, Himmler believed that possessing these objects would give him a direct connection to divine power and make his armies unbeatable. While concrete proof of these specific Grail hunting expeditions is scarce and often exaggerated, Himmler's documented obsession with the castle and with creating a new SS mythology makes the stories entirely plausible. He was a man who truly believed that the fate of the world could be decided by the magical power of a rusty spearhead. This belief in hidden power and secret locations brings us to our final and most famous case file, the Enigma of Antarctica. The Nazi connection to the frozen continent has become the foundation for some of the wildest and most persistent conspiracy theories of all time. The story begins with a real historical event. In late 1938 and early 1939, just before the outbreak of World War II, Nazi Germany did launch a major expedition to Antarctica. A German ship, the Schwabenland, traveled to a section of the continent directly south of Africa. Using seaplanes, they surveyed a vast, unexplored territory of over 600,000 square kilometers. To claim this land for the Reich, the pilots dropped thousands of metal darts emblazoned with swastikas onto the ice sheet below. They named this new German territory Neuschwabenland. The official reason for the expedition was to secure a new whaling station for Germany and to test equipment in extreme cold weather conditions. But for conspiracy theorists, this was just a cover story. The real mission, they claim, was driven by the occult beliefs of the Thule Society. They believe the Nazis were not interested in the ice on the surface, but in what lay beneath it. Drawing on the hollow earth theory, they claim the expedition was searching for a secret entrance to the Earth's interior. The ultimate conspiracy theory alleges that they found one. The legend states that the expedition discovered a vast network of ice-free caverns and warm geothermal lakes, a hidden oasis in the Antarctic wasteland. It was here, the story goes, that the Nazis began to build a top-secret installation, a military base known as Base 211 or New Berlin. This hidden Antarctic base became the centerpiece of the post-war Nazi UFO legends. The theory claims that after the fall of Berlin, top Nazi scientists, and perhaps even Hitler himself, escaped to Neuschwabenland. There, safe in their hidden sanctuary and using the advanced knowledge of vril power, they continued their work on developing advanced, saucer-shaped aircraft, the infamous Nazi flying saucers. This secret base in Antarctica, the theory claims, became the headquarters for a remnant of the Third Reich, a shadow government waiting for the right moment to emerge and reclaim the world. From the pseudoscientific racism of the Ahnenerbe to the hunt for the Holy Grail and the alleged construction of a secret UFO base at the bottom of the world, These case files show how the dark mythology of the Thule Society was translated into real and often deadly action. The Occult Reich was not just a fantasy. It was a terrifying project that left its strange and disturbing mark all across the globe. We have now journeyed deep into the dark heart of the Occult Reich. We've explored the strange beliefs, the bizarre projects, and the chilling quests for supernatural power. It is a world of lost continents, cosmic energy, holy relics, and secret UFO bases hidden at the bottom of the world. It's a narrative so dramatic and so filled with cinematic intrigue that it has captivated conspiracy researchers and filmmakers for decades. The story is so powerful that it can be easy to get lost in it. But our final and most important duty as investigators is to perform a reality check. It is time to take these sensational myths and place them side by side with the cold, hard facts of history. It's time to separate the documented truth from the alluring fiction. Let's begin with the first and most foundational myth. The idea that the Thule Society was the secret master of the Nazi Party, a shadowy cabal of occult adepts who pulled the strings of the Third Reich from behind the scenes. The historical truth is far more nuanced. There is no question that the Thule Society was critically important during the early days of the Nazi movement. It acted as an essential ideological cradle, providing the myths of Thule and Aryan supremacy. It served as a vital networking hub where influential figures could meet, and its members provided the crucial early funding and mentorship that allowed a young Adolf Hitler to rise to power. But the key word here is early. The Thule Society's direct influence peaked in the early 1920s. By the time Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, the society itself had faded into almost complete irrelevance. Hitler, a master of totalitarian control, had no interest in sharing power with anyone, least of all a secretive group of aristocratic mystics. He was a deeply paranoid leader who systematically dismantled or suppressed all independent organizations, including other right-wing nationalist groups, student fraternities, and, most certainly, secret societies. Freemasonry, the Rosicrucians, and the Thule Society itself were all outlawed or forced to dissolve under the Nazi regime. While Hitler was more than happy to use the symbols and myths that originated with the Thule Society to manipulate the masses, he had no use for the organization itself. The idea of a group of men meeting in secret to discuss hidden knowledge was a direct threat to his absolute authority. The Thule Society was not the secret master of the Third Reich. It was more like the scaffolding that helped build the house. Once the structure was complete, the scaffolding was kicked away and forgotten. This leads us to the most spectacular and popular myth of all. The story of the Nazis developing Vril-powered flying saucers in a secret base in Antarctica. It's a story that has spawned countless books, documentaries, and science fiction movies. It is also a story with absolutely no basis in credible historical fact. While the Nazis did have astonishingly advanced conventional technology for their time, including the first jet fighters and the V-2 ballistic missile, the forerunner of all modern rockets, there is not one single solitary piece of verifiable evidence to support the claim that they developed anti-gravity craft or anything resembling a UFO. There are no authenticated blueprints, no declassified engineering documents, no photographs, and no wreckage. The entire mythos of Nazi UFOs was constructed after the war, beginning in the 1950s. It was created by a series of sensationalist authors and conspiracy theorists who wove together the real German expedition to Neuschwabenland, the real German advances in rocket science, and the burgeoning public fascination with UFO sightings into a thrilling new narrative. These stories were then eagerly adopted and amplified by neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups, who used the myth of secret Nazi superweapons as a form of propaganda to suggest that the Third Reich was not truly defeated and would one day return. The idea of a secret UFO base at the South Pole is not a hidden history. It is a post-war fantasy, a modern legend with no historical foundation. But what about the man at the top? What about the myth of Adolf Hitler as an occult adept, a black magician who made a pact with dark forces to achieve power? This is an alluring idea because it offers a supernatural explanation for his almost hypnotic charisma and the immense evil he unleashed upon the world. It's easier, in some ways, to believe he was powered by demons than to accept that such evil could come from a mere human being. However, the historical evidence paints a very different picture. Hitler was a supreme political opportunist. He was a master of using symbols and pageantry to create a cult of personality around himself. He understood the power of myth and was happy to use the pseudo-religious, mystical language of Ariosophy when it suited his purpose of inspiring fanaticism in his followers. But the testimony of those who were closest to him, from his secretaries to his top generals, and his own private writings, such as the rambling conversations recorded in his table talk, reveal a man who was privately contemptuous of the more esoteric beliefs held by his subordinates. He often mocked Heinrich Himmler's obsession with pagan rituals and his SS fairy tales. Hitler's own private beliefs were a strange and muddled mix of crude social Darwinism, a distorted form of Christianity, and a belief in a vague, impersonal providence that had chosen him for a great destiny. He was not a disciplined occultist or a black magician performing secret rituals. He was a deeply narcissistic, ruthless political operator who used the occult beliefs of others as a tool for his own ends, but did not seem to be a true believer himself. Finally, we must address the legacy of the Ahnenerbe and the alleged discovery of real magical artifacts or ancient supertechnology. Did Himmler's globe-trotting teams of SS researchers find anything that validated their bizarre beliefs? The historical record is unequivocal. They found nothing. The Ahnenerbe was a colossal and expensive failure. It was an organization dedicated to finding evidence for a conclusion they had already reached, which is the exact opposite of how true science works. Their expeditions to Tibet, the Middle East, and across Europe produced no proof of a lost Aryan homeland, no living descendants of a Thulean master race, and no secret libraries of ancient knowledge. Their archaeological digs were exercises in confirmation bias, where every ambiguous carving was interpreted as a swastika and every tall skeleton was hailed as a long-lost Aryan. They did not discover the Holy Grail or the Spear of Destiny. Their search for Atlantis yielded nothing but fraudulent papers. The Ahnenerbe's true legacy is not one of discovery, but one of academic corruption on an industrial scale. They perverted the noble pursuit of knowledge and turned it into an instrument of genocide. They provided the scientific justification for the Nuremberg race laws and the horrors of the concentration camps. They were not guardians of forbidden knowledge. They were the authors of a deadly lie. In the final analysis, the story of Nazi occultism reveals a crucial truth. The most sensational and cinematic parts of the legend, the flying saucers, the magical pacts, the secret Antarctic bases, are the parts that are almost certainly fictional. The real history is, in many ways, far more disturbing. We don't need to invent stories of vril power to explain the Third Reich. The true story is about how a set of fringe, racist, and mystical ideas, born in the minds of a few eccentric occultists, were able to infect an entire nation. It's a chilling reminder that the most dangerous force in the universe is not a secret energy or a magical artifact. It is a bad idea given power. The story of the Thule Society and Nazi occultism is a chilling reminder of how dangerous ideas can be. While the more sensational claims of Nazi UFOs and magical artifacts are almost certainly fiction, the historical truth is, in many ways, even more disturbing. A small secret society, fueled by a twisted mythology of race and lost lands, helped create the ideological poison that fueled the Nazi Party. It shows that the search for a mythical, glorious past can be used to justify the most horrific acts in the present. The Third Reich may not have been powered by vril energy, but it was powered by a dark and powerful idea, and that proved to be more than destructive enough. Thanks for exploring history's mysteries with Ancient Relics Keeper. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. What secret should we unravel next? Stay curious and see you soon.